Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Today, we continue on catching up on news and notes that we haven't gotten to yet. So that's what we're planning on doing. Maybe continuing to make fun of the Lions a little bit, only because the material just keeps a-coming, you know? And look, I get requests sometimes like, can we just do more laughing at the enemy? It's like, I'm not going to do more work on it because it's just, you know, scouring videos and everything else. But if you guys send me clips of stuff that's funny, I'll just play it. You know, I'm probably not going to be a full episode, but I mean, we all enjoy a good laugh. Am I right? So why don't we just start with that a little bit? So the funniest thing, and I'll be honest, man, I've realized one of the things that brings me so much joy, as much as it's nice to be like the team on top, even though obviously we're not right now, but the Packers for a very long period of time, and the bottom line is the Packers are still the most hated team in the NFC North because of their continued dominance for so many years. It brings me a lot of joy when I hear things like I hate the Bears so much from Lions fans. And then you realize, like, actually, oh yeah, there's like a kind of a kinship here. As much as we hate each other, we very vehemently disagree on the one thing, right? Our view on the Packers and the Lions. However, there's two other things we very much agree on. They hate the Bears and they hate the Vikings, and for some reason, it doesn't click with me for some reason. I don't know if that's true with everybody else as far as like the Packers, whatever, but listening to Lions fans talk about how much they hate the Bears, it's like, you guys too? That's crazy. Oh yeah, I guess you're rivals with them too. I guess so, yeah, why not? But I'm just so used to being public enemy number one. Every time I hear, you know, Lions and Vikings fans or Vikings and Bears fans just going at each other, as opposed to just coming at us, it's just like, yeah, get them. So the cool thing now is, first of all, a lot of the weight is kind of off of us, which isn't great because it means we're not just obviously the top dog here. But, you know, everybody now hates the Lions for sure. Packers, Bears, Vikings, we saw that display from them and what they did, and is okay, not a freaking fan at all. Sure, there's some animosity toward the Vikings from the Lions side. The Bears obviously just hate everybody because everybody's just making fun of them for a long time. But right now, you know, from the standpoint of the Lions, and again, this is kind of a self-centered Packer fan here, just thinking like I just assume that all they think about is us all day long. Hearing the Lions' hatred for the Bears right now because they hired Ben Johnson. I mean, they hate Ben Johnson, but you got to understand, when next season starts, there is going to be a Lions team that wants, I would guess, it's going to mean more to them to beat the Bears than the Packers and the Vikings. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Even if the Bears aren't good, it doesn't matter. They want to brutalize the Chicago Bears because Ben Johnson is their head coach. And I love that. I love that they hate them. And then, you know, everybody already hated the Lions because of how they acted this past year. But now Lions fans are going at Bears fans so hard. Now Bears fans are super pissed at the Lions, like, you bunch of whine, blah, blah, blah. It's great. It's beautiful. I love it. It's just wonderful. Because I'm sitting here, I'm like, they got Ben Johnson, darn it. I mean, again, I don't know that he's good, but, you know, darn, that's probably my least favorite option if I had to choose one, you know. It's kind of an aw shucks thing, but from their standpoint, like I said, imagine a coach that you love, but just I can't think of like who's been a Ben Johnson for the Packers. Maybe like, you know, Dom Capers in the first several years, or like I said, if Halfley continued to do what he was doing over the next 3-4 years and got us to be the best defense in football and then went to the Bears, like it would be pretty rough. So they're losing it a little bit. And I want to play some of that. I'm going to have to do quite a bit of editing, but it's worth it because it's funny.
All right, live reaction to the Ben Johnson news. It always has been, and it always will be, the Bears. I despise this organization. I despise their fans. And for Ben Johnson to go out in a game where Jahmyr Gibbs is averaging 10.7 yards per carry at half. Only down 10 points to end up calling your worst game of the season, along with your worst play call of the season, letting J-Mo air it out, down 10 in the fourth quarter, only to lead to a trickle-down effect of Ben Johnson signing with the Bears because they're eliminated. He can do that now because we're eliminated. This is a backstab. This was a slap to the face. I hope the Bears go 0-17. I hope we sweep them until he gets fired. I hope this man does nothing for the Bears. Ben Johnson, this was a stab to the heart. Your trick plays were cool, but they mean nothing.
Let's go. Get him, boys.
For sure. For life now. It's been for life.
Ben Johnson, public enemy number one.
This kid, I mean, what a backstab. Are you kidding me? The Bears?
Benedict Arnold, Judas,
Benedict
Osama
Arnold.
bin Laden.
It's wild.
Ben Johnson.
I mean, of all teams, I get it. They got a young prospect quarterback. But the fucking Bears, you're supposed to be a loyal guy?
Ben Johnson's the biggest scumbag in Detroit sports history.
I mean, what are we doing?
This is worse than anything. This is worse than anything. This is worse than Sergey going to Anaheim. This is worse than anything. This is Ben Johnson, your public enemy number one. You are a terrorist. Oh man.
Ben Johnson's fucking dead to me, all right, fellas? I'm going to come out and say it. Guess what he won here, fellas? Super Bowl. No. Did he have an all-time just choke job in the NFC Championship game? Him and his players. Yes. Did we just lose as the number one seed to the goddamn Commanders as 9.5-point favorites? Yes. You don't go out on top, Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
You go to Chicago? The division fucking rival?
Adolf Johnson.
Dead to me, Ben Johnson. Dead to me.
Yeah.
I hope you never make it. I hope fucking Caleb Williams blows, dude.
Yeah, I hope he's actually a fucking bust.
I hope he's-
I hope he's the worst coach in the history of the NFL.
And if it doesn't work, I'm calling the Boys Town Bomber. Fuck you, Caleb Williams. My God. What the man? The Bears? Are you serious?
Osama Ben Johnson.
Are the fucking out of all teams?
Yeah.
I was praying the Bears were going to be a thing. I didn't understand it. I thought it was absolutely insane. I mean, going to the division with Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Jim Harbaugh, Bo Nix, Sean Payton, Justin Herbert. I was like, that's fucking suicide, but like, hey, it's not Chicago.
Yeah.
Now you f***ing sick. Hey, I wish you luck there, bud. No. You took the easy way out. You betrayed your brothers. You betrayed these players. I can't imagine how sick Amon-Ra St. Brown is. I know how f***ing sick I am.
Yeah.
It's a masterpiece. It's just it's pure art. But all right, coming off of that, it looks like Aaron Glenn is set to be the Jets' next head coach. It's hard to know if you don't sit down and meet these guys. That's part of the problem. Some of these guys seem qualified and they can't get a job. Some of these guys maybe don't, but you sit down and meet with them and you realize why. You know, he probably actually, I think he's a former player and everything. Checks the leadership box. Maybe he's kind of a Robert Saleh, to be completely honest, just without the resume. But whatever. Actually, they probably hope he's better than Saleh, because Saleh wasn't actually very good for the locker room, turned out. You never know, man. He seemed like he would have been a great fit. He wasn't. We'll go with this route. Yeah. You would think you'd want to go offensive guy, but whatever, man. You're the Jets. It's your identity. Might as well stick with it. Josh McDaniel probably going back to be OC of the Patriots. Just it's such a weird little clique out there. Minnesota Vikings signed Kevin O'Connell to a contract extension. Not super surprising. He's obviously done a very good job for Minnesota. Looks like Liam Cohen is lined up to be the Jaguars head coach, so everything's kind of falling into place. There's also some rumors out there. We talked about the defensive coordinator situation. There's talk that they're trying to target Darren Rizzi as their special teams coach. Now, look, as always, you never know how stuff's going to go, but if you could write out the worst-case scenario, starting with getting Caleb Williams as the frickin' quarterback, again, he doesn't look super great so far, which is fantastic. We may have dodged a bullet there, but that was just like, holy crap. Then, like, the most hyped frickin' head coach candidate since I don't know when, most coveted, young up-and-coming head coach superstar. They get him after they get the most hyped quarterback guy, well, at least it's Trevor Lawrence, but, a big one. Then they end up finding I don't think they've hired anybody yet, but they're targeting a guy that's a former head coach, and then they get the greatest special teams coach of all time, Darren Rizzi, not including Bill Belichick. We'll see how this goes, but, somebody's really trying to paint a picture for Chicago, and so far they're having success. They've been able to paint that picture to Ben Johnson to get him to go there. Again, maybe it was just a bigger check. It's entirely possible. I don't know. But they were able to sell him on the idea, and now that they have Ben Johnson, that picture becomes easier to sell to other people. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how many bullets we can dodge here, but so far we're doing okay. We'll see. All right. A little early for a break, but why don't we do it anyways? When we come back, we got to talk about the defensive line coach situation. Haven't really got a chance to talk about that yet, and I want to take our time doing it. So we'll take a break right here. We'll come back, and we'll explore that. So in addition to the parting ways of quarterbacks coach Tom Clements, who has officially retired, the only person, at least so far, that the Packers have done away with, fired, let go, is Jason Rebrovich. It was kind of a weird situation to begin with. He was one of the few holdovers that they decided to keep, and not only that, he ended up kind of getting an promotion, is the word I was trying to think of. Rebrovich was the pass rush specialist for the Green Bay Packers in 2023. He was the outside linebackers coach before that, so, starts off with Rashawn and Preston and those guys, and then, gets some kind of a promotion, I guess, of pass rush specialist. So he's kind of overseeing all of it a little bit. Obviously the pass rushers, but just the design of pass rush in general. Then Hafley comes in and he sits down with everybody, and he must have really liked what he heard from Rebrovich in terms of his philosophy and his way of going about things or whatever. But obviously we made some switches and, very different style of pass rush and everything else. And it just didn't work. I mean, especially when you think of Rebrovich as a pass rush specialist, right? He was put in charge of the entire defensive line. So he went from kind of like the outside linebacker guy to the entire defensive line guy, including the defensive tackles. But he also brought in a few other guys to help him out with that in that regard. So again, you would think that he's kind of especially expected to get these guys up and running as far as pass rush. And that was obviously a complete and total disaster. And I think maybe there was a little bit of regret there, obviously, that they maybe also should have done away with him, as a lot of the Joe Barry guys left. But the exciting thing about that, first of all, I don't think any of us were super attached to Rebrovich for any real reason, especially after this past season, the defensive line. I mean, the run defense was fine, but am I going to put that on Rebrovich, who was here prior to this when our run defense was garbage? Like suddenly he's a guru? Obviously it was Hafley that did that. He also brought in Vince Ogabasi. Vince Ogabasi followed Jeff Hafley over here from Boston College. He was the assistant defensive line coach. I'm guessing they're going to give him a look at possibly stepping into that role. He's obviously the guy that was able to help bring that defensive line situation together. By the way, in terms of run defense, yes, it was Jeff Hafley. You know who else it was? Is Campanile. I don't remember how you say it, something like that. He is our linebackers/run game coordinator. This is a guy, by the way, if Hafley were to get a job somewhere, which it doesn't look like he's going to, if he were to get a head coaching job, I think that's our defensive coordinator right there. He's been looking for that job for a long time. In fact, if anybody's going to get hired away, I don't know why he wouldn't get looks as a DC. I'm glad he's kind of flying under the radar. I haven't heard him getting any opportunities or whatever. But for a group that is, look at the emergence of Edger and Cooper, look at Quay develop as a run defender, look at our run defense as a whole, and then look at the architect of our run defense primarily is Anthony Campanile. But again, the one thing that wasn't working was the pass rush, and very happy to see, because this hasn't always been the case. That was one of my biggest complaints with Mike McCarthy, is he'd never fire anybody. They were all like his buddies, and the only way they would leave is if they got hired away. He wouldn't dare. They wouldn't produce, and they wouldn't produce, and defense did a great job, but the pass rush didn't. What do? They fire the defensive line coach, going to go find a new one. And I'm excited about it because there's some talented defensive lines that have been coached by some talented defensive line coaches. You find some guys that fit your philosophy a little bit better, that understand things a little bit better, that fit in with your crew. And let's get this thing rocking and rolling, And again, planning on getting some new blood in here. As long as we have the coaches that know how to coach and can get the best out of the guys, which I think we've seen that from most of these guys, and I'm entrusting them to find another guy that can do that. I really like our defensive coaching staff. I like Matt LaFleur on the offense. I don't know a ton about the other guys. It's hard to really gauge a lot of the other positions and the coaches and whatnot. Defense, I love everybody. Skeptical of Ogabasi, I guess, but he's just the assistant. But everything else came together so beautifully. Again, you got Ansley, who's already overqualified, coaching our DBs, and we got, like I said, Stokes first of all, look at the quality of the safeties. They did fantastic. And then you got the corners, who down the stretch gave up about 4 yards, But we got to get this one right. And so far, as I'm aware of, there have been 3 interviews. Whether they're completed or planned to be taking place, I don't know. But the 3 people so far that I'm aware of are Casey Rogers, who is a former defensive line coach and run game coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That interview is completed as of today for me, I believe. January 21st is when they did that interview. 6 seasons with the Buccaneers, worked with guys like Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey, that whole crew. I mean, we saw them. So he goes back through that era of, you remember that defensive line? That was the stiffest run defense line. I'm not going to say ever, but it was stupid. Like, you couldn't get a yard against those guys. That was their reputation. They had pass rush and everything else too, but that was what they were known for. You could not get a yard on the ground against those freaking guys. They were monsters. So to be able to grab him would be cool. Then there's Aaron Whitecotton, defensive line coach for the New York Jets. That one's obvious. That's got Robert Saleh written all over it. I'm sure, Saleh's with the Jets. They had a really good defensive line. I'm sure he put in a word for him, whether it was the Packers asking Saleh or Saleh just, reaching out to him saying, hey, this guy is legit, I'm telling you. But, he's worked with guys like Quinnen Williams and Jermaine Johnson. The Jets' defensive line and their play on defense as a whole over Saleh's tenure speaks for itself. And we'll get in more depth with each of these guys, but the interesting thing with him that I remembered was he came over, I think, for the last year of Saleh's time with the 49ers as an assistant defensive line coach. Saleh went to the Jets and plucked him to be his defensive line coach. Imagine that. 1 year of being an assistant, and that's the guy you want to pluck. Of all the guys, and of all the people you've worked with for a long time, it's like, no, that guy for sure can do it. Then there's Eric Washington, former defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. Kind of an unheralded guy because, Matt Eberflus was seen as the defensive guru over there in Chicago, and maybe he was, and therefore Eric Washington isn't the greatest in the world or whatever. But you know how much I love the overqualified guys. It's like he got his shot as a defensive coordinator. Obviously, he didn't do a bad job. Bears defense, at least especially down the stretch in 2023, was a pretty talented group. And to have him, if we can get him to take a step back as a defensive line coach, I think that's a pretty great thing. But those are the 3 guys. I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into their experience and whatnot and kind of see which ones maybe are the most exciting. Just go in reverse order since I have it up right now. So Eric Washington, Shreveport, Louisiana, which actually it's starting to matter to me. I love the fact that we got these Jersey guys. It seems to kind of click. I don't know. If one of them happens to come from like Jersey or kind of over in the East Coast-ish, New York-ish, I don't know if there's some conflict there, but it just feels like it might work. But Shreveport, Louisiana also has a little grit to it. Like, I don't mind it. Anyways, he started off as a coach in 97 for Texas A&M. Assistant coach at Ohio. Then he was the defensive line coach at Northwestern from 2004 to 2007. and then joined the Chicago Bears. It was his first time in the NFL as a defensive assistant, 2008-2009. Then he was the defensive line coach back in 2010. So that's crazy. You think about that. 2010, what happened in 2010? Well, Packers won the Super Bowl in 2010. Who did we have to play in the NFC North or in the NFC Championship? I do that every single time. It was the Chicago Bears. So that was, Julius Peppers. That was Israel Adonijah. They had some dudes for sure. After 1 year in Chicago, he gets hired away by the Panthers as their defensive line coach, 2011 to 2017. Then he becomes the Panthers defensive coordinator, 2018 and 2019. Immediately gets demoted back to defensive line coach, Buffalo Bills, 2020-2021. Then he goes up, senior defensive assistant / defensive line coach. Then 2023, assistant head coach / defensive line coach. Then Chicago Bears defensive coordinator, and immediately he's on his back. So let me just tell you right now, having gone through a bunch of these, this one just screams, please hire this guy to me. Why do I say that? Well, he spent 1 year as a defensive line coach in Chicago, immediately gets hired away. He spent a long time in Carolina, right? 2011 to 2017 is a long stretch. But after that period of time, they finally said, okay, let's make him the defensive coordinator. They did that for 2 years. It didn't work, right? For whatever reason, it didn't work. It could be kind of similar to Chicago. The head coach got fired, and therefore, he ended up moving out. It wasn't really his fault, or maybe he's not cut out for it. Either way, immediately gets picked up by the Bills. After 2 years, what do? They have to give him an upgrade. They don't want to make him the defensive coordinator, but they can't let him go, so they make him senior defensive assistant / defensive line coach. 1 year later, what do? They got to bump him up again. Okay, fine, don't leave. How about assistant head coach / defensive line coach? And by the way, Buffalo Bills defensive line, they do some work out there. Since 2020 with the Buffalo Bills defensive line. Finally, they couldn't hold on to him anymore because the Bears wanted him. And remember, Eberflus came from somewhere completely different. He didn't pluck one of his guys from his tree or whatever. There's no crossover. I mean, there may have been somewhere in the past here, I don't know. But he just knows of the reputation. And he said, no, I want that guy over there. That's my guy. And Buffalo's like, dang it, man. Only so much we can do. So this is a very coveted guy. Now, would I want him as my defensive coordinator? Maybe not. Do I want him as a defensive line coach where it seems as though he'd be massively overqualified? Yeah, I think so. I love overqualified guys, man. Does it mean he'd probably get hired away? Yeah, probably, but still. Let's get him in there, coach up our guys, teach them how to do cool stuff, and then if we got to bring somebody else in, fine, and hopefully they can retain some of that knowledge. But I'm a fan of Eric Washington if he'd be willing to take the job. But in addition to working with guys like Khalil Mack and Quinnen Williams, he's known for developing really good pass rushers, known for his leadership and ability to communicate, which is a big one for our defense. A lot of guys on our squad are very good at that. I think it's been a benefit to our group, and I think that would be big for us. His work with the Buffalo Bills and Chicago Bears has solidified his reputation as one of the league's top defensive minds. He's known for his multiple front defense, blending 4-3 and 3-4 principles to create confusion for opposing offenses. He emphasizes versatility, often using hybrid players who can line up in multiple positions. His defenses are known for their ability to generate pressure with 4 rushers. Gee golly. That sounds like a good fit, doesn't it? Sounds like something we've been asking for, allowing for more complex coverage schemes behind them. Washington also prioritizes stopping the run, often employing gap control techniques and disciplined line play. So there's that. All right, Aaron Whitecotton. He started off in high school, 2005 through 2011, defensive coordinator, linebackers, defensive line coach, et cetera, at Myers Park in Charlotte, North Carolina. 2012, he got a gig as defensive assistant at New Mexico State. And then 2013 through 2016, he joined the Jacksonville Jaguars as a defensive assistant, promoted to assistant defensive line coach in 2016. He then worked with the Buffalo Bills 2017 to 2019, started off as an administrative assistant to the head coach, promoted to assistant defensive line coach in 2018 and 2019, contributing to a top-ranked defense. 2020, he went over to the 49ers, served as assistant defensive line coach under Robert Saleh, helping the team finish 5th in total defense despite injuries. Then, as I said, so you went from assistant defensive line coach to 2021, Saleh hiring him as defensive line coach for the Jets. He oversaw significant improvements in the defensive line, including Quinnen Williams' All-Pro and Pro Bowl selections and Jermaine Johnson's development. helped the Jets' defense rank third in total defense in 2023, achieving franchise-high sack totals, coached until the end of the 2024 season when Saleh was fired. He's built a strong reputation for developing talent, particularly with first-round picks and undrafted players. I'm sure some of you would be happy to hear that. During his time with the Jets, he helped Quinnen Williams. We heard about all of that. Also credited with turning players like Bryce Huff, an undrafted free agent, into an impactful pass rusher. His ability to identify and develop talent made him a sought-after coach in the league. Whitecotton is known for his aggressive attacking style of defense. He prefers a 4-3 base. I'll unplug this frickin' thing. His defensive lines are known for their ability to generate consistent pressure on quarterbacks, often ranking near the top of the league in sacks and quarterback hits. He also emphasizes gap discipline and run stopping, ensuring his units are well-rounded. His coaching style is detail-oriented, focusing on technique and situational awareness. And then finally, Mr. Casey Rogers. Casey Rogers is actually a former player. I think he's the only one of the group that is. He played with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 92 and the Shreveport Pirates in 1994. He also started coaching in 1994, so he just jumped right in. Defensive line coach at Tennessee Martin through 96. Assistant head coach 1997. Defensive line coach Northeast Louisiana in 98. Then defensive line coach at Middle Tennessee in 99. He's just moving straight along. Assistant head coach, defensive line coach, Middle Tennessee State 2020 to 2000 to 2001. Defensive line coach at Arkansas. And then finally, defensive tackles coach for the Dallas Cowboys 2003-2004. Then becomes defensive line coach 2005 through 2007. Then defensive line coach for Miami 2008 through 2014. So that's a long stretch. Finally, he gets a defensive coordinator gig for the Jets 2015, 16, 17, and 18. Gets demoted to defensive line coach for Tampa Bay 2019, 20, and 21. And then they promote him to run game coordinator / defensive line coach. So kind of a similar reputation where he seems to go up to defensive coordinator and just can't quite stay up. Again, I don't know the situation with the Jets. I'm not going to go look it up. It doesn't matter. It's possible. It's just a complete turnover. Those things happen. But, you know, I mean, if he's a high-quality defensive coordinator, he gets picked up quickly as a defensive coordinator somewhere. And he hasn't, and he's not interviewing for defensive coordinator jobs right now. So I do like that. You know, obviously Tampa did the same thing where they're trying to keep him, made him run game coordinator / defensive line coach, you know, give him more titles, give him a little bit more money, and just try to keep him around. Give him more responsibility also, you know, obviously because they can handle it. Don't have to be a cynic about everything. They're also just good at it. Doesn't get me as fired up as Eric Washington, but it's still a cool thing. Plus, you throw in the former player thing. It's pretty cool. Let's see. Casey Rogers is highly regarded for in the NFL for his ability to develop defensive lines and his adaptability across different roles. With the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he helped to build one of the league's most dominant defensive fronts. We talked about that. Rogers is known for his hands-on coaching style and ability to maximize the potential of both star players and under-the-radar talent. Rogers emphasizes versatility and rotation along the defensive line, ensuring fresh players are on the field for critical moments. The Packers might be interested in that because they tend to like to do that. It's not my favorite thing, but it is their favorite thing. He's known for his ability to adapt scheme to the strength of his personnel. During his time with the Buccaneers, he oversaw a unit that excelled in both run defense and pass rush, utilizing a mix of 3-4 and 4-3 alignments depending on the situation. His defensive lines are known for their discipline, gap control, and ability to generate pressure without relying heavily on blitzes. Again, that's going to be a big thing for the Packers moving forward. We creative blitz designs are cool. We need to win with 4, period. Because if you can win with 4, as we've seen now in the playoffs, it's so hard to beat this team, especially when you start peppering in a couple blitzes. We got some talented linebackers that can get home. You throw those in once in a while, oh baby. But if you can't win with 4, then you're severely handicapped. So I mean, any one of them on the list so far are certainly pretty exciting. I would have to say, in order of excitement, Eric Washington is certainly at the top. Probably Casey Rogers, and then Eric Whitecotton Aaron Whitecotton after that, if I had to order them just kind of off the top of my head. But even Whitecotton, you know, working with Saleh is huge. They obviously did fantastic things. Like I said, Saleh's time with the Jets, that was the number one defense over that period of time when Saleh was there. The guy that he handpicked to be that defensive line coach, to be able to win with just the front 4 guys that he only knew for 1 year and then kept the entire time because he was doing a good enough job. If that's the worst case scenario, that's a pretty awesome worst case scenario. So, all right, why don't we take a break? We'll be right back. All right, so some other news here. Derek Ansley was actually doing defensive coordinator interviews for the Atlanta Falcons. To my knowledge, that isn't going anywhere, but we've got several guys that I think very soon are going to end up getting poached. If we can survive this cycle with none of them going away, and it sounds like as of right now they're not, that's it's pretty fantastic, because again, we got guys that just should not be doing what they're doing right now. Note from GM Brian Gutekunst. This Packers GM Brian Gutekunst said the team wants Brandon McManus back next season. Shouldn't be any question about that, but if there was any question, just feel some solace in the fact that they're just very outright declaring that they want him back. So that's there shouldn't be any question about that. Another guy getting some interviews is John Eric Sullivan. Talked about it a little bit before. I was supposed to right now be doing an interview for a Jets podcast. I know that there were some second interviews with John Eric Sullivan, second interviews with somebody else with the Jets. It was the coach and GM getting second interviews, plus Sullivan is getting a second interview with the Texans or the Titans, so it feels like he's probably going to be going there. So he didn't say anything, but I'm guessing he's just canceling for those reasons. But very likely John Eric Sullivan will be out the door pretty soon here, which is pretty unfortunate. I mean, it's Gutekunst's, I don't know if you'd officially call him his right-hand man, but I think it's probably his right-hand man. I mean, Milt is up there for sure, but John Eric Sullivan has been a big piece of what the Packers have been doing here. Futures contracts, some more minor news that we just haven't gotten to yet. The Packers signed cornerback Isaiah Dunn, wide receiver Tulu Griffin, cornerback Caleb Hayes, center Trey Hill, tight end Johnny Lumpkin, defensive lineman Keith Randolph, defensive lineman Nesta Jade Silvera to reserve future contracts. So basically what happens is when a team's season ends, they're able to sign players to these futures contracts or future contracts. The window is after the season, before the start of the new league year in March. Use them to secure players for next season, usually practice squad guys that you're kind of bringing back, sometimes some other people's practice squad guys, free agents, whatever. You're just kind of collecting essentially a little off-season practice squad. It also does not count against the team's salary cap or roster limits. So it just kind of helps teams get a boost on building up their rosters for the upcoming season. Obviously, eventually you're going to have cut downs and all these kinds of things, but for the time being, you can kind of get a head start on some of these things. None of these actually become official until the league year starts, at which point that's when you have to start coming into compliance with financial and roster limit and all that kind of stuff. But for now, you can kind of just go claim a bunch of people. These are one-year league minimum salaries, so not massive news, but there you go. You never know. One of these guys might pop off one of these days. Another note that I found, figured we'd dig up and discuss, Eric Stokes played 5 snaps in the season finale and just 1 snap in the playoff loss. That's probably telling. Can't imagine he's back in 2025, says Zach Cruz. So, some people jumped out. I was like, oh, I thought he was good. Well, I can read you the stats again if you like. I don't know what else to tell you. But the bottom line is what's telling about it is when we become healthy again, what is the preferred lineup? So when we had our Evan Williams came back, that allowed Bullard to go back to the slot, which allowed Keyshawn to go back to the boundary. And so the question then is, who is the other guy? Is it Valentine or Stokes? And they chose Valentine. That's not super surprising. Valentine was certainly the better player, but what it ultimately signals is the Packers have seen all they need to see. I mean, they're not going to not play him over, that quality of people and then say, yeah, let's bring him back and see if he can kind of step it up after this year. So, yeah, down the stretch, when everybody got healthy again, he was the odd man out. All right, finally, as I said, I want to end or do some kind of draft thing every single day. We're going to, once again, poach from Mr. Easton Butler over here, who's been grabbing a bunch of names that the Packers have or in some cases have not been meeting with, thanks to some of the bowls that are going on. So there's so many, I'm not going to go through and, start talking about each individual prospect, but we're just going to go through the list of who the Packers have, met with up to this point. First off is Wisconsin DB Nazir Forquirin. Apparently met with 13 teams at the Hulu Bowl and briefly talked to a Packers scout who loved his tape. So there's that. Packers are one of 20-plus teams to meet with ECU wide receiver Winston Wright Jr. at the Hulu Bowl. He told me that teams loved his return game ability and versatility. The Packers met with Purdue linebacker Kydron Jenkins at the Tropical Bowl yesterday, per a source. Jenkins has positional versatility, that's I'm guessing positional versatility, playing stand-up outside linebacker or off-ball inside linebacker, 44 career tackles for a loss at Purdue. In total, 22 teams have met with him since Wednesday. The Packers are one of 12 teams to meet with Pittsburgh safety Donovan McMillan at the Hulu Bowl, per Ryan Fowler. The Packers are one of, quote, plenty of teams that met with Florida A&M DB Kendall Bowler at the Hulu Bowl, with the meeting with the Packers going great. Packers met with Cal quarterback Chandler Rogers. The meetings that stood out the most were Dallas, Green Bay, Baltimore, and Indy. What does that mean, stood out? I don't exactly know, but there you go. At the Tropical Bowl, D3 defensive back Gio Nowatarski met with the Lions and had brief conversations with the Packers and Ravens. Packers met with quarterback Davis Black from California University of Pennsylvania. What the heck does that mean? What? Anyways, he also heard from the Colts. Packers are one of 8 teams to meet with Hawaii wide receiver / RS, return specialist, I'm guessing, Stephen McBride at the Tropical Bowl. Meeting that stood out were the Dolphins, Falcons, and Bears. Other meetings were Bills, Raiders, Cowboys, Lions. The Packers are one of 5 teams that stood out to Louisville DB MJ Griffin while at the Tropical Bowl. He reportedly met with most teams while there. The other teams that stood out were Raiders, Giants, Browns, and Jaguars. The Packers reportedly showed interest in Miami edge Elijah Alston at the Tropical Bowl. Packers met with Arizona running back Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt at the Tropical Bowl, with the meeting going great. He also put in here, former Packers tight end Brandon Bostic was hired as the assistant tight ends coach for University of North Dakota, so congrats to him. Packers met with Kentucky offensive lineman Gerald Mincey twice during the pre-draft process and at the Tropical Bowl. That's a lot of meetings. Those meetings reportedly went well, with Mincey expressing how he'd love to play for assistant offensive line coach Eddie Gordon. 24 other teams met with Mincey. Southeastern linebacker Jameer Augustine met with the Ravens and had a brief conversation with the Packers and Colts at the FCS Bowl and Tropical Bowl. Nevada safety Keaton Crawford met with most of the teams at Hulu Bowl and believes one was with the Packers. Did you meet with the Packers? I think so. That's a good sign. He said a lot of the interviews blended together. The Packers met with Southern Utah cornerback Lasaria Pleasant Johnson at the Tropical Bowl. Pleasant Johnson, the nephew of Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy, has met with a total of 21 teams during the pre-draft process so far. The former UNLV transfer had 3 interceptions along with 35 total whatever. It's cut off. I'm not going to click on it to read the rest. Packers met with Austin Peay cornerback Jesse Johnson III at College Gridiron Showcase. Johnson III, the nephew of NFL legend Antonio Cromartie, has met with a total of 11 teams, impressing multiple scouts, along with allowing only one touchdown his entire collegiate career. The Eastern Illinois transfer racked up an impressive year with the Governors, with 4 interceptions, 5 takeaways, 57 tackles, 1 touchdown, 3 missed tackles per PFF, blah, 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 blah. And so far, that is all. So these are mostly smaller bowls, so smaller school guys, smaller prospects or whatever, but it's good to start getting those lists put together now. For any prospect, if you guys have been doing it for a long time and you're looking for some prospects to dig into, there you go. There's a lot of names to start digging around with. But with that, I think I'm going to head out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.